He had finished preparing, deciding to start hunting as pits of spears are seen surrounding him. A few days have gone by as the cure walks into the restricted area. Back when he was a scout, he could walk around here causally. He notes a burning smell and finds burning poop. Yes, poop is on fire in this world, meaning only one monster has that kind of poop in this area. Vikir is happy to find what he was looking for. A beast with flames in its mouth stands above the queue. It was a hellhound. The hellhound was a beast that swallowed the hellfires of the oil world, causing its body to become one with flames. Vikio was barely able to defeat one at the age of 18 in his past life, being 8 years old. Now it was impossible for him to defeat it now. However, the cure, thanks to his past life, he knew a way to beat it. He dashes towards the hellhound, knowing that one of its weaknesses was moving in straight lines, only making it hard to change directions. But easy to dodge, the hellhound is stunned that Procure-dodged Vikir opens a bottle with water, spraying it across the ground. As it was another weakness for hellhounds, they could not step across any volume of volume. This causes the hellhound to avoid the water on the ground as it runs towards the cure. Thanks to the water, it exposes another weakness that all canines have, opening its mouth while running. Vikio takes a step back as the hellhound lunges at him with its mouth open, the exact moment the cure waited for. The cure flicks something into its mouth and causally dodges the hellhound as it tries to circle back to the cure. However, the hellhound feels something was wrong and stumbles to the ground, whimpering. The cue reveals that chocolate was poison to canines, and since one bloody bean could make 100 liters of chocolate, it was the ultimate poison for it. The hellhound lays on the ground, whimpering, unable to move. Here walks towards it. Drawing his sword, looking for where the ribs aren't present to target its kidney, the hellhound whimpers in pain as the sword pierces its body. Vikia does the final blow, and a blue essence forms from the body. It was called XP, or karma, created when you catch monsters after energy accumulates in their body, making them stronger. Vikir absorbs it, making the short sword he wields lighter. Vikir is happy, as he'll be able to catch up to his regression state before he is of age. He wonders what Hugo's face would make when finding out that an 8-year-old brought back a monster whose rate is B+. With this monster, the MC secures first place in the practical test and has decided on what reward to get. The reward is a book that only he knew its true worth. The MC proceeds to decapitate the head of the hellhound, but senses a presence behind him. He turns to see 4 more hellhounds. He wonders if they came because of its cries and that they wanted to avenge it. The Q chops off the head of the dead hellhound, excited at the thought of fighting more of the hellhounds as he had more beans left. However, a bigger presence is felt by the hellhounds, and Vikita notices, believing the hellhounds to be afraid of his bloodthirst. The hellhounds bow their heads in fear, but hellhounds never submit, even if they were to die. Vikio realizes something and turns around to see a 3-headed figure. A Cerberus. Vikir is alarmed as it has a rating of a+, but it was supposed to be at the 7th rich. Why was it her? Vikir thought. Vikia notices wounds and blood dripping from its body. Multiple arrows with other injuries were inflicted upon the beast upon closer inspection. The MC concluded that it was because of the barbarian tribes across the mountain, as it was their territory, and that it came all this way because of being chased by them. The Kia covers his blade in aura and dashes to the injured Cerberus. He attempts to slice one of its heads, but was interfered with by its other head. He slices it in reaction upon slicing it. He realizes that killing it was possible due to the war with demons. Paikyur was able to polish his swordsmanship, and there was no sign of unnecessary movements to his techniques add on his strengthened body from the river sticks. The Cerberus readies for another attack. It dashes toward him, smashing the tree that was behind into bits. Pick here leaps out of the way before it could harm him. He thought to himself, even though his arm was still there, the damage still remained, and that wouldn't be able to take a second hit. The Cerberus turns around with the odds against him, he thought of. The situation as a journey that every experienced hunter must find a way out of. He thinks of the best possible action to take, and decides to simply just run away as fast as possible. The Cerberus was alarmed, seeing him running away. It chases after him. Vicky thinks that he was lucky that the Cerberus was injured, else he would have been torn apart by now as he continues to run away from it. He just has to make it past the iron fence, making him exit the restricted area, leaps over the iron face, and readies himself to reach the place he had prepared beforehand as the Cerberus reaches the iron fence as well. If he was caught before reaching that place, it would be the end for him. The Cerberus rips apart the iron fence with its face roaring loudly as it continues its chase, dashing through the trees. He looks around to spot the area. He notices a pile of wood in front of the tree, making it the area where he was supposed to be. He runs with all his might just a little bit further. He thought to himself a bit more. He screams as the Cerberus chases right behind him, realizing it was the perfect moment. He leaps into the air. Just as the Cerberus opens its mouth to attack, a single step forward onto a marking causes it to sink into the ground. Vicchio lands on his back, safe from its attack. Breathing heavily while the Cerberus was met with many spears hidden in the ground below, he welcomes it to the cradle of sorts, wiping the sweat off his face. He was happy that the traps he made for hellhounds were useful against the Cerberus. Bloody beans were spread onto the spears that were in the ground. Being the same species as the hellhounds, the Cerberus was poisoned easily, as its two heads cough vomit and are in pain. Its middle head notices Vakir growling at him as he holds a spear aimed at it and throws it with all his might. The spear bounces off its body as it growls loudly toward Vakir. The cure starts to count down from 7 with each step. The Cerberus took a second past. It slowly reaches Vakir as the countdown approaches 0. Once it reached 0, it simply fell to the ground. Victor lets out a sigh of relief as the Cerberus falls to the ground just before him. Happy to know that the rumors were true about the 7 steps, he explains that the spear he threw was different, that it was laced with the poison of the bloody mamba's venomous fang from when he was a baby. He goes on to absorb the mana from the Cerberus, meaning that it was fully dead this time. He stares at its corpse, thinking about how he should bring it back. But before that, he had something else to do. He knew that the presence of a Cerberus meant one thing: dungeon, since its gatekeeper was dead. The dungeon was free to be explored. The MC proceeds to cover himself in dried soil, rotten leaves, and moist roots. Looking at its footprints and drools, he backtracks it. He walks to an opening, saying he found it. He enters the cave, recalling that the cave was meant to be discovered in a few years' time. He stares deep into the cave, feeling its mana underneath the rotten surface, knowing that it has not been discovered yet. No light was given out, making the cave seem deeper than he thought. He smiles, happily excited at what treasures are laid within the dungeon as he slowly enters. As he walks further deep into the dungeon, the MC notices red veins of ruby minerals throughout the area, feeling that they were connected to the Red All Mountain. He notices light appearing before him, indicating that it was the entrance to the dungeon. The light shines brightly at him, making him cover his face with his hand. He enters a large room, and at the center of it was a floating red stone. Realizing that the dungeon's interior was bright due to the mana imbued into the ruby, as he approaches the floating ruby, he notices something behind it, a skeleton with a note showing that someone had been here before him. He inspects the skeleton, seeing its injuries caused by stabbings and that there were dried brown blood stains. As he picks up the note on the ground, a long time has passed for the skeleton. Vicchio read that the writer did not want to reveal his name and asks to be called Cain. The reason behind the note was to prevent other generations from doing what he did, further explaining that the stone chamber was talked about in the family as a legend. His brother Abel and he had coincidentally came across this place raiding the dungeon, and its countless trials. They had killed many monsters before arriving at the chamber to find the final assignment to the place. The final assignment tied their feet here for a very long time, 3 years to be exact. BQ can't believe that they stayed for 3 years, hinting that the brothers really wanted the treasure, and that the final assignment was somewhere in the chamber. He looks at the stand of the floating ruby and sees some writing when entering. It's 1, but once inside it's 2. When leaving, it's 1 was the riddle written on the stand. The note continues with the brothers contemplating the ominous text forever until they came to a conclusion. The fact that they were twins meant that they were once 1 in their mother's womb. But when given birth, they became 2, meaning to get the treasure they had to become 1 again, and only one of them could leave with the treasure. After a fierce battle, Cain killed his brother, and there was only 1 left in the stone chamber, but there was no change at all. Cain wonders why the treasure did not appear even after killing his own brother. He wonders why, screaming, he decides to leave, wanting to tell others that found this place to leave immediately, and that there was nothing to obtain in this devil's den that only serves to taunt humans. The MC concludes that the brothers had done all sorts of things only to leave empty-handed, knowing that he had no twin. The MC believes that the brothers had misinterpreted the text as he looks at the ruby. Thinking of the riddle once again, he thinks hard, knowing that no dungeon cannot be beaten upon looking at the skeleton again. An idea comes to mind. The MC figured it out, stating that the brothers were unlucky due to being twins, and that idea had they fixed to it. He mentions that the answer lies in the dungeon as he reaches for the ruby, saying that when he entered the dungeon he was one, but as soon as the ruby light was cast upon him he was too due to his shadow. He smashes the ruby into pieces, knowing that without its light darkness re-enters, making the stone chamber open its final stage. The riddle answer was shadow pieces of the ruby that fell to the ground started to rise up, and energy from the rubies opens the passageway in front of IKEA. Vikir smiles happily as the final stage opens.